What is good, my ghouls and goblins? Welcome back to your weekly horror movie live streaming podcast. We're really scared. My name is Taylor, and I am joined, as always, by the main man, the top goblin himself, Connor Breedlove. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing it. I'm kind of a little bit of Wired Taylor tonight. I'll forewarn you.
Yeah.
I know you're a fan. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of Wired Taylor, but I wanted to get there. So I'm doing what I can. I ate some caffeinated chocolate.
Oh
you ever heard that? You ever heard of caffeinated chocolate, man?
Never heard of it.
We went to BA Sweeties, which for our non-local audience is like a candy warehouse. It's like what if you went to Walmart but all they sold was candy? It's like that. And we got
that literally sounds like heaven on earth for me.
It was mayhem.
Notoriously a big fan of candy.
Pure mayhem. And we got caffeinated chocolate, and I had a caffeinated peanut butter cup about an hour ago. And it's
Where
hitting.
is this?
It's hitting. This is out by like Brook Park, kind of. No,
all right.
No, Brooklyn. Sorry, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Ohio, though. So if everybody wants to know, that's where they would go. And
that's close to Cleveland, right?
Yeah, it's about 25 minutes outside of Cleveland, I would say. Yeah.
Hey, I got a new stop for Saturday.
Worth the trip. That's how we open our show by scheduling our week. Welcome to Reely Scared. Oh, also worth mentioning, I have a cold brew coffee beer. I'm howling at the Dunkelweizen today. Look at this thing, man.
Those are dangerous. The cold brew beers, those are dangerous.
Yeah. Beer Wolf, Great Lakes Legendary Series. I don't know what that means, but it is big. It tastes like coffee and oranges. It's got a pissed off werewolf, and he's howling at it like an orange moon on it, man. This stuff's
That's how you're going to feel if you have a couple of those.
You're going to see me transform. You're going to see me turn into a lichen right here on the show. I'm really scared tonight. I'm going, man. What are you drinking? I saw you sipping on a little something there.
I got a Urban Artifact kind of variety pack. So sipping on the Pineapple Ghost right now. Gonna try the key lime next. They're sour beers. They're pretty good. Double
fisting.
Yeah.
Double fisting with sour.
Gotta have the next one on deck, you know?
Yeah, this is my last one. Well, we're ready to go. It's a tall bad boy. I'm caffeinated. I'm ready. Let's get scared. Because this is the show where every single week we are joined by a special guest to discuss a horror film of their choosing. Maybe it's their favorite horror film. Maybe it's their first horror film. Maybe it's so bad it's good. It doesn't matter. Whatever angle they want to approach it from, we speak about the film that they want to discuss. And tonight we are having on a man who is no stranger to the show and this channel. If you know about Who Are They Real Entertainment, you know his name. Matt Thomas, the co-founder. He'll be joining us in just a few minutes here, but we always got to tell you the best way to support the show. You're checking out Reely Scared. If you're checking out the channel, you say, I like what these fine lads are doing. I want to see more of it. I want to help them out. It's a couple quick, easy steps. Number one, you're watching us on something. You're watching us on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. Go ahead, like it, follow it, subscribe to it. Whatever is possible, I want you to do it. I want you to go for it. The only limit is the one set in your mind. So go ahead and do whatever you have to do on that platform, including on Twitch, because soon, right now you can only follow on Twitch, but soon you'll be able to subscribe on Twitch. As that affiliate status, we've achieved it, and we're going to be implementing it quite soon. Chris Anthony Lopez in the chat. Look at these cuties. Chris, I'm so glad you mentioned cuties, Connor, because what else can people do to support the show?
If you're listening to us after the fact, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, subscribe to it. And then afterwards, if you like the channel, if you like the content, just leave us a little cutie. It doesn't need to be a huge story about, why we're the best horror podcast online, anything like that. Just gotta be a cutie. Just a little cutie.
Just leave a little cutie in the comments or review section of your favorite podcast platform. It helps us out. It'll enable us to get bigger and better opportunities. So please leave a little cutie if you like what we're doing. Speaking of cuties, you want to look like one? I got another brilliant way to support Reely Scared. And that is, of course, by making a purchase with wretchedapparel.com. I got mine on right now. I'm sporting the Wretched tonight. I'm feeling a little wretched myself. Go on over to wretchedapparel.com, our wonderful sponsor, and make a purchase, perhaps of the slasher hoodie. I got the long sleeve on tonight, but perhaps of the slasher hoodie. Maybe you like the damned hoodie. Maybe you like just maybe like a little t-shirt. You know, it's warming up. Maybe it's not. I can't keep track of it anymore. It's snowing right now. It wasn't yesterday. I don't know what climate I live in. That's okay. Wretched Apparel makes them for all occasions and seasons. So go to wretchedapparel.com, and when you check out, go ahead and try out this little promo code here. Really Scared for 10% off. You're going to get 10% off your purchase. You're going to support a great small business, and you're going to support this show. So head on over to wretchedapparel.com and put your order in. Promo code Really Scared and save your 10%. That's how you support Really Scared right there, baby. So appreciate it. And go ahead and send us a little cutie of you wearing the Wretched Apparel, too. There's a lot of different definitions to cutie, and you can be one. So try it out. Go ahead. At lower costs than ever. Beautiful. Oh, I'm so excited for this. Yes, Chris Anthony Lopez, you didn't unintentionally cause a segue because you are a consummate professional and you are an expert broadcaster. So thank you for doing so. Thank you for joining us tonight, whether you're watching live or listening after the fact. We've got a great show for you. As mentioned, we always have a guest joining us on this show. And tonight we've got a big one. Very excited to welcome the co-founder, the host, co-host of Spin from the Reel, co-host of Real Talk. He is the master himself. Ghouls and Goblins, put your hands together for none other than Matt Thomas.
What's up, guys? And Taylor, you actually got it right the first time. Be a Sweeties is Brook Park.
It is Brook Park. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Remember, Connor, you know where that AMC in Brook Park is?
Yeah.
It's on the other side of the freeway.
It's B.A. Cutie. B.A.
Be
Cutie.
a Sweetie. Be a Sweetie. And it's a fun. We'll have to take Chris if Mortal Kombat happens, because that they have an outdoor putt course there also. So
true, closed for the season, but we'll see. I don't know. Like I was saying,
they opened last April and they went April to like August. So
if it warms up and the nightmarish pandemic ravaging the nation, it calms down, maybe we could go play some mini golf sometime. I would love it. And you know Chris likes a little bit of candy. Because if I ever seen a sweetie, it's that little Oklahoma cutie himself.
Indiana cutie. Indiana.
You know, his sweetness doesn't adhere to any traditional borderlines. Matt, thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome back to Really Scared. I think it's been a while since you've been on here.
Yeah, school's a bitch. That's why. Because normally, also, I think it helped with the change in direction with the show, because now that you're not having the movie news all the time, it's not like you need that producer in the background as much.
I always need you. I need you here now, okay? And I'm happy you're here. I don't think we've really talked to you on Really Scared in any real capacity since Lovecraft Country winded down that I can think of.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit. So welcome back, and it's quite appropriate that you're back for this episode because once again, we're talking about a little Jordan Peele production, his directorial debut. That is the film that you picked. That is what we are discussing tonight. Jordan Peele's Get Out. And Matt, of course, we're a little more familiar with you than maybe guests of recent. But all the same, we got to ask you the golden question. I got to know. I love that when it's here. Why did you select Get Out for tonight's film of discussion?
So Get Out was the film that actually opened my eyes to the horror genre. It was only like the second horror film I had watched in my life. The first, and actually, no, if I'm being realistic, it's the first one I watched. It was the second one that I was really around because, like, back in high school, I went to a mini gathering and they put on Paranormal Activity and I wasn't paying attention. I was just like, I'm going to goof off on my phone. I don't care about this. But there was something about Get Out, and I didn't even get on the hype train like everybody else did at first. It was mid-April, and it was still in theaters. So I went out to Melt one night with friends, and they're like, well, let's go see a movie. And we're listing off all these movies. I'd already seen most of them. And then somebody said, well, have you seen Get Out? It's like, well, no, I don't really do horror movies. Like, well, I think we'll give this one a shot. I'm like, it looked interesting enough. I don't know if I'll like it, but he's like, well, we're going to go see Get Out because I'm driving. Okay. So We went to go see Get Out at the Regal Cinema, Ohio, and it was just something that captured me from like the opening scene till the ending scene. So it all just blew up from there, because that I was like, okay, let me give this a chance, and this a chance, and this a chance. And I think the fact that it wasn't slasher horror is ultimately what won me over, because the slasher stuff was the stuff I'm like, I always brushed off. I'm like, horror is not a good genre. It was, I know people hate this term, but it was the fact that it was elevated horror that got me interested in it and let me just be like, you know what, let me give horror a real chance, and it all just snowballed from there.
Did I hear that right? That you would say this was basically your first horror film?
Yes.
And what do you think it is? I mean, obviously you said you didn't like slasher films didn't really appeal to you. What do you think it was about this? You know, obviously we were kind of roped into going to see it, but coming out, what do you think it really was about this that made the genre appeal to you? And obviously the sense that it was elevated or maybe higher brow than your average, ghost movie or slasher movie. But what coming out of it, what made you go, okay, not only do I love that movie, but I'm open mind to a genre that I wasn't really engaging with before?
I think it was because of how intelligent the film was. If the film wasn't as intelligent as it was, I probably would have written it off as, okay, it was just another unintelligent horror film. This is what horror always seemed like to me. So once was enough. I can say I tried horror and I didn't care. But now it was like, oh, horror can be smart. Let me go see these past horror films. And that's how I got hooked onto the Halloween films, because I'm like, you know what? Even though that's a slasher film, that was actually pretty smart. I remember you were there for Us when we did Us for one of our first critic screenings. You were George's plus one.
Always an honor. Always an honor for the George to bring me in on his arm as his plus one.
Oh, Connor's gotten that honor for Transformers before.
Yeah. Yeah, Transformers last night, we looked at each other when
what the
Transformers slapped someone with a giant fish, and we both looked at each other like, what the fuck?
That's interesting to hear, though, that not only did it open up your mind to horror going forward, but it gave you the ability to go back and maybe see these films in this genre in a different light, that you were giving things a chance that maybe you hadn't previously. First school in the chat. Love to see it. Thank you for watching, honey. Yeah, I think that's very, because typically, when we bring guests on the show, we more often than not are talking to people who are kind of dyed-in-the-wool horror fans, and they've been following the genre for years of their whole life. It's like when you go to ask them, I heard that, nice one, baby. When you go, hey, pick a horror film, it's like, they're like, oh man, I'll get back to you. Let me think about that for a bit, because there's only so many that are kind of on the shelf for them. But for you, I can sense that you really immediately gravitated like right to this one.
Yeah. And like I said, I guess it was partly being forced into it, partly because I'm like, okay, this looks more intelligent than most horror films. I'll finally give a horror movie a shot. And like I said, it didn't disappoint. It actually outperformed any expectation I had, because I was like, yeah, maybe I'll be entertained. And it was probably my favorite movie, or no, it was my second favorite movie. No, top three, because I have to remind myself that Get Out, Black Panther, and Us all came out. Get Out, Black Panther, and Black Klansman all came out in that same year, or around that same year.
Because it's 2017.
Black Panther is 2018. Oh yeah, I can't remember my films with 2017, but yeah, I just remember it was one of my favorite ones of that year, and I had to, like, my dad is like me. My dad, I used to be like my dad, where he doesn't care about horror whatsoever.
Yeah,
and we were watching. We were watching something, and it was around the time Get Out was coming on Blu-ray, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm buying that. You're gonna watch it with me. He's like, no, the fuck, I'm not.
He was resistant to it too, huh?
Yeah, and then it came to the fact where he saw it was getting all the awards love and him being a part of the Broadcast Film Critics Association. He's like, all right. And they sent him a Blu-ray of his own. He's like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Let's watch.
Mm-hmm.
And we're watching. He's like, hey, we finished. He's like, okay. And that, like, he straight up said, as of right now, there are very few horror films that he'll go see. If it's one that's directed by Jordan Peele, he's going to automatically say yes. That's why he was at us with us that night, because he's like, right. Oh, it's a Jordan Peele horror film. Let's give it a shot, because he's got some intelligent shit to say.
Yeah. And we'll get George on the show eventually. He can't stay away too long.
You already know the movie.
Yeah, we'll get George in the hot seat before too long on here. No, you're right. This movie was like a hell of a phenomenon when it came out.
Yeah.
You know, and didn't necessarily take to awards season for that to take hold. You know, this thing opened up huge, and I was, obviously I was open to the horror genre, clearly, but I remember coming up to it. I didn't really anticipate it being as big of a deal as it was either, or that it would be so good. Because this is coming from Jordan Peele, who now you think of immediately synonymous with horror and genre stuff. He kind of becomes that after this.
When this came out a couple of years after Keanu.
Yeah.
And I loved Keanu. And I
saw Keanu with you. That was one of the first. Oh, yeah. That was one of the first screenings I ever went to.
Yeah. And so Keanu was good. I loved Key and Peele. And when they said he was making a horror movie, I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then the premise, and then eventually seeing the movie, I was like, wow. And it makes sense, because watching Key and Peele, if you go back, they've done things that have like had a horror tinge, but it obviously very slapstick and funny. But the skits they produced on that show were like way more like well done than they should be.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a surprise that, Get Out and Us were so great. But yeah, it's weird hearing Jordan Peele and automatically thinking horror.
Yeah.
I remember the first comparison I made to, and people didn't understand it or probably won't understand it at first, but when I explain it a little bit more, they'll understand why. The first thing I compared the Jordan Peele to after seeing the film was the Russo brothers, because the Russo brothers were more so known for their comedy directing of shows like Community and things like
Arrested Development,
things like that, before they broke into the Marvel realm. I mean, think about it. One of the first movies they directed was You, Me, and Dupree.
Yeah.
So
no, I disagree. As soon as I saw You, Me, and Dupree, I said these guys are going to make the most successful movie of all time, hands down. I thought it was going to be that movie. I thought that was going to be it.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have expected him to be able to make the 4-film series that they did.
Yeah. Chris does bring up an interesting comment. He'll never forget watching Get Out for the first time, second time, the third time, and every other time.
Yeah.
Does the effect from the first time still withhold each time you see it?
So I watched this film last night for like the first time in a year, and it was almost as if I was in the theater all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably going to upgrade my Blu-ray copy to a 4K copy soon, because it's on 4K. It wasn't at the time when it first came out.
What do you think it is about the movie that has that lasting effect, where it's the same kind of feeling, if not elevated, every time you see it?
How the social commentary is still relevant, even going on 4 years later, still relevant. Sad that it's still relevant, but it's still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Unquestionably, and this movie is coming at such a unique, and obviously it's dealing with themes of race, but coming at it from a way that I think a lot of people did not consider in 2017, and probably still not really considering now, in that it's telling a story where the antagonists aren't overtly or purposely racist. It isn't, some backwoods, neo-Nazis or something like that. We've seen those kinds of stories before, which isn't this. And I remember being so surprised watching it, and also even when I watched it this recent time, to echo yours and Chris's statements of, man, this movie is so goddamn good. And like it really is. And every time I sit down, I like remember. I've seen it a couple times, but even this time, I was like, right away, like 10 minutes, and I'm just like, oh, that's right.
I forgot about the deer. I forgot about the deer. I was like, shit. I'm like, oh wait,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I remember that now, but damn.
And I forgot the use of Gambino in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Or the opening credits. I was like, oh god, I forgot how great this movie is. Like,
yeah,
everything about it is just so spot on and like perfect. It's incredible watching it. I've seen this movie countless times, and it's still just so fucking good.
I don't remember. I remember when I first got the Blu-ray, I watched it constantly, like on a constant loop, because I was digging deeper and deeper into it, and it's just one of those things where you pick up more and more each time, and you're just like, fuck.
Yeah, and I think you picked up on it, Matt, that this is a smart movie in a lot of ways, and not just from being so inspired by current events and understanding so intrinsically what its mission statement is, but just how tightly plotted it is. That it's the type of movie. I recently talked about this on For Chris's Sake, available on all audio podcast platforms now. But there are certain movies out there where you watch them one time, and then the second time you watch it, it's almost a completely different movie. Having understood what you're experiencing, you go back and see how it's telegraphing it and setting it up all throughout the movie from the start, which this does. I remember being in the theater the first time and getting so excited when it went. And obviously, this is full spoilers for Get Out. If you haven't seen it,
4 years later,
you owe it to yourself to watch it, because we're going to be talking about all the different details in this. But when you get to the reveal to what the Armitages are doing by the end of the film, I remember being so excited by just how weird this movie was willing to get. Like how out there and how willing it was to embrace how much of a wild, like escalated horror film it actually was. Because I didn't see where it was going. I didn't figure out until like right when the movie was ready for me to know. And then you go back and you're like, oh, every question mark that comes up throughout the entire movie is resolved and answered once you go back and watch it again. You're just like, everything is feeding into this plot.
It's so tightly knit. There are very few films where you can go like, there's no plot holes in them. Two of them I can say without a doubt are Searching and Get Out.
Yeah, this every decision in this is like coherent and intentional. There's no mistakes or coincidences in this. Everything is feeding into a cohesive plot, and that's no mistake for sure, because my understanding is, now again, we were saying we think of Jordan Peele as the horror guy. I mean, horror projects are getting made just by virtue of having his name on them.
Yeah.
But at the time, not true. He's Key and Peele. He's Mad TV. Maybe he's kind of a comedic actor still. He's Keanu, but he had written this and was, I guess, kind of a lifelong horror fan. He was a big fan of the genre, and he had kind of written this as well as a few different stories, I think, without any real intention of them getting made, not thinking that was going to be a possibility for him in his career, because he was the comedy guy, and not thinking he'd be able to get something like this greenlit. But had a chance to pitch it, and it got picked up, and then it's just like, it's been this whole career and life reinvention for him. It's like you just learn you learn, first of all, how, I mean, I shouldn't say learn, because it's apparent in other things, but you do see how intelligent he is, how socially conscious he is, and just what a great writer he is. How creative he truly is when there aren't any limits. I mean, now there's not. He's in that blank check position.
And we're not going to see a shortage of Jordan Peele projects. Because when this came out, he said he had something like 10 scripts ready, like all kind of using that socially conscious theme as Get Out. And we've seen 2 of them. We have a 3rd coming out. So who knows how many more he's written, but it's going to be forever till we see the end of Jordan Peele.
Well, not only that, this film allowed him to open the doors for other young black filmmakers.
Yeah.
I remember right after the success of this film that it was announced that, hey, Monkey Paw is looking for scripts from young creators who are people of color. We want to hear your stories. Tell us your stories. We want to try to get these stories made.
Right.
And going back to nobody really saw this coming. I'm just going to be honest. Would any of you expect a film with a $4.5 million budget to gross over $250,000 worldwide?
I mean, yeah.
When it comes to
Blumhouse,
yes, it is not surprising at all.
but my point is, it's coming from when you throw the Blumhouse side of it out right now. If it's $4.5 million film, a horror film from a guy notoriously known for comedy.
Right. No, I mean, I definitely wouldn't expect. Like I said, coming up to this, I was like, Jordan Peele made a horror movie. That's interesting. Like I didn't go like, oh man, that's going to be amazing. You know, I don't want to say I disregarded it, but I didn't have any real sort of expectation for it. It was like, okay, I guess I'll check that out. But it was clear right away as soon as this came out, like, oh no, there's something different about this one, you know. And I didn't see it immediately. I didn't see it like opening night or anything, but it didn't take long for the buzz to cultivate and it being obvious. Like, no, this is tapping into something that is really resonating with people. Everybody's going to see this, and everybody wants to talk about it after they've seen it. And it is so great that this winds up at Blumhouse, because that is their thing. Is like, okay, we're going to find a script we can make for just a couple $1 million. I mean, like you said, 4.5. I mean, that's relative peanuts in the game of film financing.
And realistically, when you look at this film, it's probably just buying. If I remember correctly, they built that house because they needed it to be secluded and in the middle of nowhere, basically. So most of that was the budget for the house. Yeah,
and I think they wound up having to shoot most of it in like Alabama too. It was originally set for LA, but they ended up having to go to Alabama. And then it's the thing of like Blumhouse, like not a lot of meddling, not going to get in your way, going to give you the ability. You know, if you can make it cheap, they're interested in making it, and they're going to find a way to market it so that a lot of people are going to see it, and it's going to be profitable.
And the thing is with Jordan, like you, I didn't really have any expectations until I saw the trailer, and it's a marketing strategy that, you know, Jordan Peele's using on all of his projects, like the trailers and stuff like that, where they take like a R&B song and then just slow it down like 2 times, and it's just super creepy. If you notice, he does that in literally every promotional trailer he does for any of his projects.
What was the song on this one? I can't remember. Because I know Us was obviously got 5 on it.
Yeah. This one was Darkness Below by Gloria Oath and the Blood's Dead Tones.
Okay. Yeah. I remember it had a good trailer, but even still, like, not quite anticipating that this was going to be a cultural phenomenon, you know, and it really was. It really became a must-see movie. If you didn't go watch Get Out, you were out of the conversation a bit, you know.
Well, what I laugh about when it comes to this film is the fact that I know a lot of people who I know personally who are right-leaning loved this film and didn't understand the context of it whatsoever. And I'm just sitting here like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, it's not. It's not subtle, which isn't a critique. You know, it's by design not subtle because it wants to make its point, and so it is hilarious to hear that people kind of missed it or expose themselves by being sort of upset by it. You know, you know that there was a lot of that kind of it's discriminatory against white people, that kind of language getting thrown around, which is hilarious. It kind of causes people to out themselves and their true self by their reaction to the film. Yeah, it's true, Chris. That Us trailer is fantastic.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, someone has to watch Us and talk about it on this show.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure we will talk about Us on this show before too long. And yeah, Bradley Whitford would have voted for Obama a third time if he could. I think what Chris is saying is because if I do remember rightly, Bradley Whitford in an interview with a magazine, maybe GQ or something, had said like he didn't realize that the vote for Obama a third term was like a joke. Like he didn't even realize that was making fun of something. But that's what Get Out, it's about a lot, and it's not my position to say what Get Out is about, but it comes at the aspect of discrimination and racism from a white liberal left leaning perspective, and how microaggressions inform racial discrimination in a way that people really weren't. When I say people, I basically mean white people and white liberals weren't really comfortable with addressing at that. And even still, I think
you mean white conservatives because you said liberals, because white liberals really have had
Well, yeah, this movie is really about white, like ultra liberals.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd say a white ultra liberal by a black guy. That's just my personal.
That's what's so fascinating about it. It's the unintentional, because I think people think of Get Out as kind of, it came out in like the Trump era, right? But it was written and created, coming out of the Obama presidency, where there's this sort of illusion and this lie, socially in the country that, well, racism is solved, it's done, we defeated it, it's all over, right? And I think that dishonesty and that lie that a lot of people were going to tell themselves is sort of what informs Get Out, because this is, it's all in the setup. It's all in the way that, well, I was going to say Rose's parents, but Rose eventually gets there too. But it's all in the way that Rose's parents and all their friends, so eager to prove that, they aren't racist, so eager to prove that, we're cool, we're woke, right? They end up doing all these different little things, these microaggressions that make Chris so uncomfortable, and come all the way back around and transform into this own different rendition of discrimination that isn't so overt. Chris doesn't know what that movie. He doesn't know what Us is. He'll never know what Us is, and he'll never watch it, and he'll never talk about it. You can never make him. But when the film came out, I thought that was so fascinating, because it was, causing people who thought, that they were overtly allies to take a harder look at themselves and recognize their place in all of this, and even for me, that's a perspective I would never think to take. Obviously, I'm so fucking white that I gotta like adjust the white balance when I turn my webcam on. I look like a goddamn vampire before we start.
Casper, the friendly ghost.
I gotta sit here and play with the levels because I'm like overexposing the entire show. So, I mean, just such a smart perspective and a message and an idea that I would never really in a million years think to get to, but it really does change my perspective on what it's trying to say on, the political, social, racial climate of America in 2017. And just like you said, Matt, so still completely applicable to right now. And, and I don't know that I'll ever in my lifetime, probably see a moment where something like this still doesn't, manage to be relevant, which is upsetting, but also speaks to just how prescient and intelligent the film is.
Well, you could argue it's honestly more relatable now, especially coming out of the presidency that we just came out of, and just to see looking. And I was thinking about this as I'm rewatching it, looking back in the beginning when when you think she's sticking up for Chris, when the cops wanting his ID and all this, and it's really like, no, I don't want a paper trail. No, because then he'll show up missing. The tiny stuff like that, where you think back, it's like, that's just fucked.
Yeah, that's one of those things. That's in all those little scenes. The first time you watch it, it's completely a different movie for like half of it. You go back the second time and you're like, oh my God, it was right there the whole time. Everything is informed by the plot. That is a great scene, because then you watch it the first time, you think like, wow, like she
actually cares about him.
Yeah, what an amazing partner, because it is also, it is obviously a very true life moment of a white police officer ready to harass a black man for no reason other than just being there. So you feel like it's a political movie, and it's a racial movie. You think that's what the scene's about, and it is still about that. But also, you go back the second time, and yeah, she's not cool. She's not being an ally. She's literally she knows if this dude runs his ID, they're going to be able to pick up that he was here when the missing persons report comes out. So like every little moment.
And here with me, because she had the ID, because he was the passenger. She had given her ID and everything because she was the one who hit the deer. So if he's ID'd with her and now he goes up missing, she's the first person to go for.
Right. Exactly.
And Connor, I know you and I talked about the alternate ending when the Blu-ray first came out.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of glad I'm going to touch on this now because I got ADD. My brain's going everywhere. But this,
I was going to talk about the ending, but I was going to wait for it. But yeah, the ending still makes my heart sink.
The alternate ending.
Well, that's worse. But I remember being in the theater and seeing the lights come on, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like he was right there. Like, "Oh, this is bad."
Yeah.
And then,
but I'm kind of glad Blumhouse pushed him to be like, "No, we don't want that ending," because that alternate ending could have ruined what was otherwise a powerful film.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about, obviously, we can dance all around it. You know what I mean? I think anybody listening or watching is seeing it out. So I think everybody will be able to follow along just fine. But yeah, this does have two different endings. One of which, the one they stuck with, kind of a more comedic, but more optimistic overall ending.
Mm-hmm.
A better feeling walking away from it.
Justice is served in that one, basically.
Right. Chris does indeed get out and is rescued and is able to presumably go back to some sort of normal life. The other, he defeats his captors, but is arrested and taken to jail. Which I remember, we said it. They still have that moment where you see the lights reflecting off his face, just as he's kneeled over a dying, bleeding white woman. And I remember the first time I saw this. Still. Again, it was a phenomenon, pretty full theater. It was probably, second week still, even by then, in full theater. And you could just feel the energy in the theater as the lights hit his face. Everybody just went, oh,
drop.
Fuck. Because we all just know. And it's so sad that that in that moment, you don't feel like, oh, help is here. He's safe. You go, oh, this got so much worse for him. Yeah. You're like, he's at best, he's getting arrested. At worst, he's going to die. That's the situation you're dealt with. And then the alternate end, they actually do have him arrested and in jail, which and
blamed for all the murders. They're like, how'd you kill all these people?
Right. Which unfortunately is the ending that I think feels more true to life, but also just leaves you with a completely different sensation coming away from the movie. And I'd read about so I hadn't seen the alternate ending until I watched it this time, because it was tagged on at the end. And so I'd read about it before, and I read about it a little more this time. And what I understood was that was the ending Jordan Peele was insistent on at first. I think it was the first ending he wrote.
Yeah, maybe. It was.
And coming out, like we said, coming out of the Obama administration, coming into the Trump era, as it were, he felt that, with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and with the conversations that we were having socially, watching, people murdered by police, he felt like we needed something more optimistic. We needed sort of a more hopeful ending, because to do otherwise, it would just be so tragic and defeating. Even if it felt more true, he wanted to give something, a spark of hope to people at the end of at this very grueling, intense fucking horror movie. And I agree. I think pulling the tension out at the end and giving you that sense of relief was probably the best move. Because this movie also, in addition to being a horror movie, it's really funny at times too.
Yes, it is.
See, I'm not gonna lie. The first time I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, it's a horror. I straight up thought, oh, this is Wayans Brothers doing a horror movie.
Oh yeah,
that's the first time I saw the trailer. That was my thought. I'm like, I don't know if I'll give it a shot. And like I said, if it weren't for I'll drop the friend's name. If it weren't for Ricky, I wouldn't have even seen this film.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ricky. Yeah, it is still, Jordan Peele's coming from the world of comedy, and that definitely informs the script and the story. But primarily also comes from Lil Rel Howery, who is terrific. From my understanding, he also improvised most of his lines.
You lying bitch.
I love after that also, like after she does that whole thing where she's like, I know how you look at me, I know you want to fuck me. He hangs up and he's like, she's a genius. It's so funny. She's a genius.
I still sex slave. He's a sex slave.
Yeah, that's the whole movie is like conscientious that you need that, like, because it is just so heavy and grueling and just weighs on your soul that it does feel like you get to breathe a little bit. When we cut back to his character, Rod, who just basically gets to hang out at Chris's apartment and take care of his dog until he becomes the TSA detective at the end. He put so much light
going out to the
cops
too. Don't forget about that. The scene where he's at the cops, and you're like, "Oh, this black cop is gonna believe him. It's all good," and she laughs it off. I was just like,
"Yeah." He gets so close. What he comes up with sounds absurd, and then it actually ends up being even what's actually happening is even crazier than what he's pieced together. Where he thinks everyone's being brainwashed into sex slaves. He's amazing in the movie.
I mean, he was still partially right once you think about it, at least in the case of Andre Hayward.
Yeah, like Heath's character. And let's talk about that too, because you mentioned that Jordan Peele coming off of this not only now has this amazing career opportunity in front of him, but he's also helping other minority filmmakers and storytellers get their opportunities by producing their projects or signing on to things. He also, I mean, for me, Daniel Kaluuya, I remember I'd seen him in Sicario, but I don't think I'd seen him.
I saw him in that and Black Mirror.
Oh, you're right.
An episode of that.
Yeah.
This was the first thing I'd seen Daniel Kaluuya in person.
I was relatively new to him.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him in those, but didn't know who he was. And now it's he's winning awards for all kinds of shit.
Yeah. Kaluuya's a star. And so is Lakeith Stanfield, who I definitely don't think I'd seen.
This was only the second time in my life that I remember seeing Lakeith Stanfield. The first being Atlanta. Atlanta was my introduction to Lakeith Stanfield.
Yeah, same.
So to have him, when I saw him in the film, I'm like, oh, I wonder how big his part is. It's a small part, but it's a small and important part.
Yeah. Well, he was also in Dope, but he had a small part in that. But I didn't really know who he was. Right. He had all these small parts, but yeah, Atlanta and this were his first big roles, and now
Snowden, I guess too. But I never saw Snowden.
But now, everybody knows Lakeith.
Yeah.
Get out. You want to know what? There was a film that I remember him in now, and I remember everybody saying, "Watch out for this kid because he's supposed to be a star in the future." And it's crazy to me that I'm just thinking about this. He was Snoop Dogg in Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah, that's right. He was.
And I remember people talking about, look out for the guy who's playing Snoop Dogg because he's got some stuff coming up. And I'm looking at his history right now. I'm like, everything makes sense now. Everything makes sense.
Yeah, the two of them become leading men, basically, and their careers are still developing, but they basically become leading men catapulted out of Get Out, which is especially remarkable for Lakeith, who has a pretty small part in this, but such an important part, and the range that's required of basically everybody in this is remarkable. Every act, not a lot of characters in this in general, but they're all the actors are having to bring so much to the table that the script is asking of them. Even Allison Williams, who I don't think I've actually seen in anything else other than this, who's amazing in this.
Either.
I remember her in the NBC production of Peter Pan.
I missed that one. But I found out, I didn't know this. This is actually her feature film acting debut.
Yes.
The first feature-length movie that Allison Williams has ever been in. And I think she has been more of a television actor, maybe even still now, showing up in series and things. But I mean,
Girls
holy shit!
Primarily known
terrifying. When she's on the staircase, and he's like, "Where are the keys? Where are the keys? Where the fuck are the keys?" And then she goes from panic to menacing on a dime.
Yeah,
it is scary.
I would say the entire deceit of what's happening relies on that performance working for you. Because I don't know about you guys, but I think maybe I mentioned earlier, but I didn't know that Rose wasn't,
Yeah.
somebody to trust until the film was ready for me to know that.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, Cody said, yeah, she sells the keys moment so brilliantly, 100%. Like, not until he starts flipping through the photo album in the weird tiny room do I go, oh no, everybody's in on it except him. No, I always give her the benefit of the doubt, and the movie relies on being able to convince you of that, and it does it so brilliantly, and so does she. She's the duality of that character is
and
nuts.
then even after that, like, it has to sell you on she's this like
A psychopath,
which
they do with the Fruit
also
Loops. I'm gonna
sells
eat a
that
Fruit
so well.
Loop one by one, and then milk in between it. I'm just like, that's not normal. And
Yeah, searching NCAA like prospects and
NCAA prospects, and I think the most telling thing about that scene is, and I know this is one of the symbolisms in it, is that she's not mixing the colors with the white. She's taking the colors first and then drinking the white milk afterwards.
Yeah.
I'd also read just earlier this evening, I just thought this was a funny anecdote, that Jordan Peele finds like milk creepy. He thinks he finds like drinking milk creepy. He was like, when you think about it, that's very weird. So he's like, I thought that would be like a gross and scary thing to like have her drink milk. He's right, like who was the first dude to drink cow's milk? Like, what a weird ass. Right? Like, now it's so normal, but like you wouldn't talk to that dude if nobody else was doing that. Chris Lopez in the chat, the Allison Williams heel turn sucked the air out of the theater. It's stamped in my brain. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Matt, you bring up, separating the, with the Fruit Loop and milk scene, separating the colors from the white, that kind of like symbolism, which was, brilliant. There's a lot of symbolism in this that people just like obsessively watch this movie over and over again to like find all the symbolism. Are there any others that you picked up on?
I tried making mental notes. There was a few last night, and I'm kind of blanking on them 24 hours later. I remember the deer being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The deer, the way the deer
comes tied up in the armchair.
Yep.
Reverted back to picking cotton out of it to save his life.
Yeah, that one was lost on me the first time I saw it. It's one of those movies you just find out those little details when you watch it, a couple of times, and you're like, oh my god, this movie's so smart. It's just every scene, every moment, every decision is very deliberate.
The bingo being reminiscent of slave trade.
Yeah,
that one still just hits me every time. Just heart drops.
Yeah,
because like just seeing stuff like that take place in today's time and era is jarring. Especially being black myself. That was just one of those things where I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
I remember kind of like during that scene in the theater, like sort of craning my head, because the whole the whole thing of like, well, this a black man goes to meet his white girlfriend's family for the first time and something bad happens. That's kind of all you really know going in. So I remember that part. I'm like craning my head. I'm like, oh no, is this? I'm like, so it's a slavery thing, and like it ends up yes, but still in a way that you don't anticipate or really get. At least I didn't get privy to until they're finally ready to tell you. And there's so many great like the thing with Chris is smoking. They're so critical of you got to stop smoking. And at first you think it's this whole thing of like, well, that's my kid. I don't want you to smoke around my kid. It's gross. It's a bad habit. It's like, no, they're literally trying to protect the property that they intend to sell to someone later. They don't want. It's just like, oh my god, it's so fucking.
And let's talk about how ingrained in the zeitgeist this movie is still. Like, the sunken place is now a like common term for people. It like there's a lot of this that is like people refer to it just offhand. Like it's crazy that this movie has, not really crazy, it's rightfully so, this movie has like an important place in the zeitgeist.
Mhm. Yeah, and then first of all, just from a filmmaking standpoint, those sunken place scenes and shots are so amazing. You know, so scary. And I know that they'd done a lot of it by like, you know, suspending him from strings and having him, you know, hang in front of like a green screen and like, but you know, just doing a lot of impressive things with a very modest budget, you know, and then also, you know, it's just a fascinating film to read about. Jordan Peele's like just a really interesting guy to find those interviews, those podcasts for, and kind of get where he's coming from on these movies. Because, again, you know, as a white dude, there's so many things in this that I'm not seeing, perspectives that I'm not privy to, and you know, how powerful is this that it can bring things to me that I've never thought about before, and never could thought of before because I don't have that perspective. I don't have that place, you know, in history. And in this moment to ever think of those, like how the sunken place was supposed to be representative of like, you know, minorities in America who had to pretend to be one way and have their, you know, true selves watch from a distance for the sake of their own safety. Things like, and yes, hello Waffles meowing in the background. We see you. We love you.
He's a camera whore, apparently.
Him picking cotton out of the chair to save his life. Like,
yeah. So many great little moments, and this is an experience. I'm watching it the first time. This is an experience I'm always hungry for, which is just truly that edge of your seat cinematic moment of like trying to figure it out and you can't, and you're just every time you get a little another piece of info, you're just like salivating for it. You're like, I need to know what's happening and I can't figure it out. And it's just, you know, that doesn't happen that often. I might see a movie and love it, but you know, it's only maybe once a year, twice, maybe if even that I get that moment of going like, oh, this is just lighting me on fire. Like I need to know what's going on. And this had that. So many little details that make you ask questions and keep you in suspense. Like, what's going on with what are the characters' names? Georgina and Walter?
Yep, George.
Yeah. Let's talk about those performances.
My God.
Because again, a lot is being asked of characters that and you would think kind of minor roles in the plot, but they serve to make you so uncomfortable as an audience member and so confused about what is happening.
Walter being the grandfather trying to relive his glory days of all that running, and like ultimately these people discover the fountain of youth. That's what they discover, a fucked up fountain of youth that requires them to just move their brain body to body.
Yeah and I'd be interested in what you guys think of this, because the characters present this as such, and I think they actually do believe that at the end of the day what they're doing isn't racist. They're so convinced.
Yeah,
racial.
What they're looking at it as is they're not racist because they're not viewing these people as like worthless or like just here to like do chores and stuff like slavery. They're viewing it as like, these people that were kidnapping and ultimately like removed their brains. They're like the perfect specimen. They're, strength is better than ours. All kinds of stuff. They'll find any reason to use them, and they're viewing it as
it's us appreciating them more than anything.
Yeah, but it's such a twisted way around it, and that still goes on. Like people will find any reason to say I'm not racist. Like it's the same thing as I'm not racist. I have a black friend. It's just insane, their reasoning for I'm not racist. This is not racist.
Right. I mean, there's the Stephen Root's character at the end. Like, even when he's being prepped for surgery, to have his brain put in this man's head, he's like, look, man, I know, like, don't let me in with those other weird. It's not a race thing, man. Like, I'm cool. I just want to be able to see again. Like, I truly think he believes at that moment. He's like, I'm not a racist. But I really want to be able to see, like, I think all those characters think, because they don't view as what they're doing as discriminatory. They think, oh, we want to opt in to the Black experience. No, they in their minds, they value it when they really covet it. And it's during that party scene. There's the one guy who asks Chris, like, do you find it, more of a disadvantage or an advantage to be a Black man in modern America?
And it was an Asian guy who asked it too. The only other minority at the party. I was like,
yeah, which I remember, again, coming out of the Obama administration, like there was that fallacy that racism was done and taken care of, and then there was also those people who would come around and be like, well, it's actually better to be a minority now. It's easier now. It's more difficult to be the white man. Like that's some shit people are still saying now. Toronto
would probably think that right now.
Got her ass. Yeah, I mean that was actually questions people were asking and things people were saying, and it's astounding when you hear it. And I think that those are the kinds of conversations that are in Jordan Peele's head when he writes this. Is, the people who go to bed at night comfortable and content, thinking that there is no discrimination, within them, and that they're not capable of that. Or it's like the whole, I don't see color thing. And it's like, well, if you don't, you're being incredibly dishonest about the world you live in. It's better to be honest and realistic. And even if you have to reckon with some pretty uncomfortable and disturbing things, like, better than telling yourself a lie at the end of the day, and more disrespectful to do so. That I think those are, the type of characters that the Armitages are, and what is stacked in this film. I don't think any of those people think of themselves as racist or discriminatory, which especially Bradley Whitford's character, who's got it turned up to 11. But he's great, he's so eager to be the cool dad. Like, as soon as Chris gets there, he's just like putting on his show, and it's hard to watch. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I do gotta some piece of symbolism people don't pick up on is the villain's last name, Armitage. It means hermit. What do hermit crabs do?
Oh my God.
That's insane.
Never knew that. Look at this. Oh my God.
That's crazy.
They go from shell to shell to shell to shell throughout their life to keep surviving.
Oh my God. I never knew that. Look at this. Even now. That's why these kinds of movies are so great to talk about, because you can learn things even when you're not watching them, just in discussion. There's just such rich stories and experiences that are so well written. But yeah, Bradley Whitford, I think, is great in this. There's that it's such a meme now, that Obama for a third term thing is such a meme now. But again, that, like, I feel like I'd heard people say that shit without an ounce of irony before,
Mm-hmm.
And it's this weird eagerness to appeal woke, and it's like, well, if you were in earnest, an actual progressive person, you wouldn't have to like put on a performance to appear that way. You just would. You just would in your way of life, But it's like somebody different from you enters the room, and now you're putting on this show, and it's like that's not the traditional way of you would think of discrimination, but it's completely that. Treating somebody differently because they look different from you, and you act differently.
What's up, Ferris?
Ferris, thanks for tuning in. This is a great film. This is such a good film to talk about. Catherine Keener, who, oh
my God,
so
scary in this.
She's always like the nice mom, or in a comedy. No, just another one of those actors you wouldn't expect to be involved with this project, just because of her past body of work. Just like you wouldn't have expected this to come from the mind of Jordan Peele, given his past body of work. It's just Bradley Whitford. I mean, even Bradley Whitford, because he's done a lot of comedies in his day. If I remember correctly, Billy Madison comes to mind.
Madison, yep.
Yeah.
Oh my God, watching this again for the countless upteenth time. The moment they sit down outside and she's like tapping the teacup, I was like, oh my God, like not this again.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, yeah, and that's a great line, Ferris. How'd you find me? I have TS, motherfucking
A.
We handle shit. Consider this shit.
Yeah, I know it's too good. It would be such a shame if that wasn't there at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
it was definitely the right move to go that way. Yeah, the movie's totally preying on what like your expectation, I think, of how the story is going to turn out, but also your disposition to automatically like these actors, and because they are appealing to you as look how nice we are, look how accommodating we are. You know, that Rose telling him right at the bat, I didn't even bother telling them that's your butt because they're not racist. It's not going to be a thing, but it is completely a thing as soon as he gets there. And, you know, obviously, you know, Rose is conscientious of this because she's done this, you know, 30 times or whatever, right? And that's something else that kind of got me this time. I'm like, what happened to all those other people that are walking around out there that they already did this with, right? Like we see Andre, and we know what happened, you know, with Georgina and keep forgetting it. Walter. You know, they're there because they're the grandparents. They get to stay there, but it's like they're people just walking around who've already been subjected to this whole experience. But
do you think they're walking around or they were failed experiments?
No, they're walking around. I think they're walking around because think about it. When you look at that video, they've perfected this already. This video is we've perfected it. That the grandfather was probably close to death shortly after that video, and
because they were the last three. The three that we see were the last three.
The latest three. Yeah.
We don't see anything about those other pictures.
Although I guess I would think
they would also be there at the party because I mean you saw.
I mean, depends on where people are from, though. Look at it this way: they, outside of Lakeith's character, these are older white couples, and think about all the people who were asking Dre about him. It seems like that Lakeith's character is just there to help bring this about. We don't know why the wife was there. Like maybe she wanted the brain in a different body because of how. I mean, let's be honest. Lakeith is a gangly guy. He's like a 6'4" version of Connor.
Sure.
So, I mean, but I remember one of the most disconcerting things, and honestly, this line is on par with something from Boogie, which Connor and I reviewed the other day. Is it really better? I was like, okay. We're just gonna.
It's such an awkward exchange, and you're just like that whole sequence is very off-putting, and then it just gets.
I know Tiger. I used to be a pro.
Yeah, you're just like, oh my God, and then he goes upstairs, and then it intensifies that creepiness. Where
that was the part that like
stop laughing and talking, and it's just silent, and they just look up. Like that was so creepy.
Yeah, that's the real like rug pull moment that makes you go, okay, what the fuck is happening? Because I remember trying to figure it out up to that moment. You know, like what are their goals? Like, is everybody here in on some mutual plan? What is going on? Why is he actually here? And then they all just stop putting on their performance once Chris is out of earshot. I'm just like, oh, I just remember chills. And then again, it was one of those moments you just hear people kind of like chattering to each other of like, oh my God, what is happening? You're so anxious. You want to know. And you're like, okay, something really crazy is about to happen because all these people have shown up for some mutual purpose that is at the expense of Chris. And yeah, that moment's great. You guys mentioned, like, you were talking earlier about the procedure, the like Caligula procedure, and you know whether it always took. I got the sense that with Georgina, like it didn't really take super well because she's the like Walter. I mean Walter's out there because it's a old geriatric white dude in a black man's body trying to like put on a performance. But which by the way, he's super fucking creepy.
Yeah.
when Chris, because Chris goes to him and be like, "There's got to be somebody I can relate to in this awful weekend."
Yeah, that brings me to a point where I don't think the ones prior to these three actually made it.
Because Georgina feels like there's some glitches in the system.
Yeah, I think the video saying we've perfected it was their way of being like, oh, we can convince our subjects to like believe in this procedure.
Yeah.
Like you'll have a better life, yada yada yada. Like
they must have had more hits than misses though, that all those people are rolling up like, I want to buy into this.
Right. That's
Yeah.
because let's be honest. All we see this. Let's be honest. That's probably not 1,000. That's probably million. How much you paying for the body?
Yeah.
3, 4, 7.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I just went to put down one. I put them up 7, and then we get 10.
Yeah, which is it's a great scary scene. The auction is just, and even I remember even in that moment, I'm thinking I'm thinking Rose is okay because she's always the one to cool him off. Like every time he gets off put by something that happened, he thinks Georgina messed with my phone. I think your mom hypnotized me last night. Like people are treating me differently. He's always like escalating to that point where he's like, I want to leave, and she always is able to walk him back, and he's eager to come back. I think that's the real sad thing is you see he always goes, never mind, it's cool, it's all good, it's cool, because it's like he's been conditioned at this point to just to never be emotionally honest or like angry. He's always got to restrain himself because that's the world he's come up in. That's,
tell you what, he's probably never dating a white girl again after that.
No, I think he's gonna go become a celibate monk somewhere after that.
And, yeah, his like reluctance to actually like kind of confront it I noticed this time is like sewed in right from the beginning with the deer, and then he actually gets out to check on the deer, but then we learn about his mom where he didn't leave his bedroom, and then we see that towards the end when he hits Georgina.
Right.
He's like, no, like convincing himself to go, but he's like, I've gone this far. I didn't get out of my room when I was a kid. Like, I have to get out of the car. Like, his whole motivation, it's like he's at battle with himself, and like it's sewed in right from the beginning. Right.
He's not gonna leave this woman behind, and still giving the benefit of the doubt that maybe there's still some way to save. Or no, he doesn't know Georgina necessarily what's happened with her yet. He learns when she wakes up, and that's when it becomes clear it's the grandma because you ruined my house, and attacks him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The deer is a great way to kind of track his growth and the trauma that he's still reeling from. Not only they hit a deer at the start, which reminds him of his mother who died in a hit and run, and he's obviously carried the guilt of that moment with him forever because he feels like he could have somehow saved her and didn't, even though he's just a kid. It's a little kid at home watching TV. Like, what was he going to do? But he feels like he didn't even try to do anything. And then not only do you see him finally have the courage to say that in his mind when he's going to save Georgina at the end, but also the way the symbol of the deer, which he weaponizes to kill Bradley Whitford. Mm-hmm. Which is I gotta say it again. I love how crazy this movie gets. Because I saw a lot of people get hung up on Us for this, where it was like, well, if you think about it realistically, like it doesn't make any sense. Where do they get the scissors and the jumpsuits? And they're all down there, and that doesn't make like. I think Jordan Peele, at least with this story so far, there is an element of like it's a movie and you got to go with it. You don't think of it in terms of relative realism. Just let the story tell itself. And I think Get Out has this too, because there's no huge exposition. Like they explain the procedure to Chris because their whole thing is like, well, if you kind of understand what's going on, it takes better.
That's the problem with audiences. Like, we talked about this earlier.
A little bit earlier first,
Oh yeah, Rose in the Cop. Yeah. It's a scene it's a scene that plays so different the second time you watch it. Yeah.
Yeah. This movie is, smaller in scale. It's very contained. But audience's problem with bigger stories like Us is they need an answer for everything. They need answers. And when you have a big story like Us, like just enjoy the story. You're not going to get every answer. Like, it's not an MCU movie where there's going to be another movie that might answer your questions. Like, every plot point does not need an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need an answer for the scissors and the jumpsuit. You really do not need an answer for that to have the movie be as impactful. And same would go for this movie if every scene didn't really tie back to something else. It would not lose the impactfulness of the movie.
Right. How is it possible that this procedure could happen? Because the movie said it did. And
Exactly.
sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But cultural influence and societal influence is what creates that plot device. The literal taking something that's happening, I guess, more of a figurative sense and making it literal, and that, what white people want to opt in to, like, the black experience and aren't even going to be honest.
Black is in fashion.
Yeah, that fucker. Yeah. Yeah, which again was to go back to the whole idea of, like, oh, is it an advantage or disadvantage? That was the kind of stuff people were saying, I think when probably still saying, but definitely saying when Jordan Peele was writing this movie, and it's taking that figurative idea and boiling it down to a literal idea and building a movie around it. The procedure works because the movie says it does. The what are they called? The doppelgangers. They're why is it slipping my mind all of a sudden? What do they call them?
The tethered.
The tethered. Thank you. The tethered. I'm tipping my tongue. Tethered. How is that possible? Because the movie says it is. Because it's saying something different and making it a literal plot device in a horror, which is what I think Jordan Peele's interested in when we talk about the social thriller. Finding social ideas and conversations and taboos and making them literal horror movie antagonists, which is we talked about this time and time again on the show, the power of using horror as a lens for social commentary, to make a statement, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's fears and what gives them that anxiety and what does keep them up at night, and the power of that, the universal power and fear, and how you can take something like this. And if you're a good writer, and if there's intelligence behind it, you can really make something special, which is what this was. I mean, I think a lot of people hadn't seen anything like this before, because, like Matt was saying, I don't think, a lot of people had initially recognized the potential and power of horror to do something like that, And
I think this film is kind of at the forefront at what we've seen as a horror renaissance the past few years.
Yeah.
Because we started seeing more intelligent horror films after this. I'm not saying like more I'm just saying quantity wise.
Right.
Because we were getting stuff like cheap slashers and that weren't really building franchises. The only one that you can argue that was the Purge series. You had series like Halloween floundering. You had, Friday the 13th is still in flux. Freddy Krueger's been in flux. Like those old classics that you had to hold on to. We're searching for newer horror content that basically captured an audience. And this was one of the first things that did, and we've seen it grow since then. Right. Look at the new Halloween movie. That movie is still a slasher film, but it's smart. It has something to say. It's realistic in look at the PTSD that Jamie Lee Curtis's character is going through, compared to what you see in the other Halloween films. Yeah.
No, that's a great. The reception of this is a great point, because not only it all of a sudden legitimizes horror in a way that I don't think is happening at the time. Which, if you're like, again, a hardcore horror fan, the range of that genre, what's possible in it, and there's so many different layers to it. But for a general audience, maybe not as apparent, especially from a critical standpoint, because this is one of those rare things where the critical reception and the audience reception were neck and neck. Everybody was saying, "I love this movie." Nobody else could pull that off except like Paddington Bear. Jordan Peele, Paddington Bear. The only two guys who could kill the box office and the critic game and the audience reception. Those are the guys right there. Because because this was like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for weeks and weeks and weeks, and some fucker eventually ruined it and brought it down.
Yeah, the same guy who gave the only negative reaction to Toy Story 3.
Was it Armand White?
Yeah.
Damn it, Armand.
It's always Armand White but Roger's actually a friend of my father's, and Roger, when you talk to him, does give his reasons. Like Roger was the first guy back when Into the Spider-Verse came out to give it a negative review, and everybody shat on him for
it. yeah. Hard to go against the mass consensus, I guess, but very rare to see that mass consensus where it's like everybody's just on board. Doesn't happen a lot. And I mean, we talk about critical acclaim for a horror film. Connor and I obviously know that, like, every year there's like this just awe-inspiring horror film that's like, it's got great performances. The script is amazing. The director did a killer job. It's like you're seeing something you've never seen before. And then award season rolls around, crickets. The performances get ignored. The script gets no love. The director, not getting that push. This film wins an Oscar, nominated for Best Picture, and wins Best Original Screenplay. And I believe Jordan Peele's the first Black writer to ever win Best Original Screenplay.
If I remember correctly, yeah. And he was robbed of Best Director, just saying that.
But nominated for that too. And by the way, this is a directorial debut.
And wasn't Daniel Kaluuya nominated?
No. He was. Daniel Kaluuya was nominated, but I can't.
I think
this was the 2018.
Five nominations, I believe this had.
I'm gonna go to the 2018 Oscars, and we'll list everything. Yeah, I mean, he lost to Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour.
Yeah, which I thought was bullshit.
Yeah,
that was. Let's be honest. That was like the Leo Oscar. That was here. We're finally recognizing you for this body of work, even though you've had way better performances before.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great actor, but that wasn't that. You're right. It was that Leo Oscar. It's like
that was Shape of Water year. That was Guillermo. Like, once again.
Oh, Shape of Water. Well, I mean, fair enough. That's not quite a horror film, but very weird genre movie.
It has horror elements to it. Horror elements to it.
Yeah, not something I would have. I loved that movie. Not something I would have immediately anticipated the Academy giving a ton of love to either.
So that was my number one of the year. Get Out was my number two. Now that I'm remembering it.
Yeah, good year for genre films, but it's in now. I mean, let me know if I'm forgetting an obvious example, but like this is 2017, 2018 Oscars, but like I don't feel like any horror film following this has still gotten that. I mean, Us didn't. So
Us got a little bit of a push, but it didn't get the pickup. Like,
Hereditary didn't get anything. Midsommar didn't. Nothing's really gotten the love that Get Out has gotten.
But that's kind of the issue with the Oscars, because the two genres that they're known are most notoriously known for cutting out of the picture are horror and comedy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people felt like Eddie Murphy should have won for a few of his comedic roles between the 80s and 90s.
Oh my God, tangent. But I just read this yesterday. I don't know if you guys ever heard this, because I hadn't either. And I don't know how true this is, but there was reportedly a version of this movie where Chris was going to be played by Eddie Murphy. Have you ever heard this?
No.
I was like, granted, I pulled this off IMDb trivia. I don't know how easy it is to put things on IMDb trivia, but it was like one of the higher. It was like one of the higher ranked items. Like enough people had said like that's interesting, but like reportedly when it was initially written, he had thought of Eddie Murphy as Chris, and then decided he's too old, which he definitely is.
Definitely. And then again, we don't know how long ago he actually wrote this.
That's a good point. He could have been sitting on this.
It could have, because Key and Peele got big on Mad TV mid 2000s. Yeah. Eddie Murphy was younger then, and you could probably pull something. Eddie was black, still hasn't cracked that much, and back then he still looked like he was in his mid 30s.
Yeah. I mean, I also found out that like this was partly based on not based on, but inspired by an old Eddie Murphy like stand-up bit about like going to see horror movies and like the white person in the haunted house always has to go check out what that noise is. You know, like when the audience is yelling just to get out, like that's where he got the phrase from, was from an Eddie Murphy comedy bit where he was yelling "get out."
That I had heard before.
Yeah. So like I guess I can see how he thinks, well, that's what it's based on. I've got Eddie Murphy on the brain. That's who's going to be at the center of so much. Which what a different movie that is, I think.
I don't know if that's much of a different movie, honestly. Eddie's done well in his dramatic roles. You look at Dreamgirls.
For sure.
You look at even more recently, Dolomite Is My Name. His more dramatic turns, he still performed well in. I mean, even though Coming to America, and to tie that in real quick,
plug it.
Our Coming to America review dropped today, and also part of the reason that my eyes were glancing away is because I had to send out a tweet from our Twitter. Amazon decided to drop Coming to America early, so after this show, go watch Coming to America.
Oh shoot! You can just watch it tonight.
Yeah. But yeah, so even him as Prince Akeem is a semi-serious role, even though the film's a comedy. The demeanor of the character is still one that's serious.
Yeah. No, I definitely do not doubt the dramatic chops of Eddie Murphy and that he would have the ability to give that performance. But I think it does help a lot to have a relative unknown at the center of the movie.
Yeah.
So your expectation is left at the door. You don't know what to expect. And also, obviously, after the fact, like we said earlier, it catapults Kaluuya as a leading man after this. You know, I mean, he gets to be in Marvel movies. You know, he was great in Widows. He was like scary. He was scary in Widows.
God.
You know.
Oh, he's so good in Widows. Holy
now he's in Judas with Lakeith, like and that's their movie, right? Like they become leading men off the back of the success of this film, which is calling it shot for not just Jordan Peele, but for some of the actors in it. It's, you know, it's an amazing just sort of cultural touchstone the moment that it comes out.
I mean, and Daniel's about to be in the next Jordan Peele movie. I almost said Daniel Peele. So
that's right, yeah, and that's the other thing that comes out of this is Jordan Peele now gets this great relationship with Universal and Blumhouse, where it's like, again, it's that thing that happens sometimes. Like most recent example I can think of now, it's kind of extinguishing, is the Nolan Warner Brothers thing, where it's like, oh, we had such a great time on our first
Snyder Warner Brothers, which has extinguished now.
Ari Aster and A24,
right? It's like we believe in what you can do so heavily. You just tell us how much it's going to cost, and you go do it. You know,
in Jordan Peele is like one of the only other directors. I mean, you got Nolan and Tarantino, and like
the Safdie
some extent where like they announce a movie and you don't know what's about, you don't know the title. They just drop like, oh yeah, they're making a new movie and these actors are like rumored to be in it, and you're like, sign me up. Jordan Peele is one of those directors where we don't know what this movie is going to be about. We don't know the title. We just know Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer are rumored to be in it.
And some people have theorized that it's actually a Get Out sequel or tied into a Get Out shared universe. Considering
which was cool, but it's one of those movies where people are theorizing about what it's about. They don't know what it's about, but they're so hungry for it because it's a Jordan Peele horror movie. That doesn't come around often, where you don't even know anything about it, but you're signed up already.
Yeah,
right.
I will say, it being a continuation makes sense because, like, and I wanted to bring up this point earlier because Connor, we don't know what happened to those other people.
I just would say I think it's too early in Jordan Peele's career to go back already.
True.
I personally would prefer to see something new from him, something new and different than his previous two. Still horror, but a new story.
I'm not saying a direct sequel. I'm just saying there's rumors Daniel Kaluuya could be returning as Chris in a new story.
That'd be cool.
I do remember when this came out, you know, the obvious question became, will there be a Get Out 2? And I think he kind of entertained the thought of like, I'd be willing to get there eventually, but I'd have to really believe in the story and have something equally interesting to say to do a direct follow-up to this.
Connor, this is similar to something you've said in the past. Universal, how much money do you need? Jason Blum, 5K or 15K. Universal, how are you going to make a movie with 15K? Watch me.
That's his like high budget. Like most of the time, it's like how much you, like $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, which by the way, I guess it's also worth mentioning that
15K, yeah.
I
read that wrong.
That's his low budget, but he'll still make like 10 million off of it.
Yeah. I think it's also worth mentioning that, Blumhouse kind of hits a little bit of a prestigious run after this too, where again, I mean, a Blumhouse movie gets nominated for Best Picture. That didn't happen before Get Out. And
he won for Whiplash. He won for, or he was, no, he didn't win. He was nominated
for Whiplash because that was just a Universal film that he was a producer on. Wasn't
right.
Blumhouse.
I do forget that sometimes non-horror projects do still fall under that Blumhouse banner.
For a Blumhouse horror, yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, for them, because I still think even now, perception of Blumhouse, this comes out the same year as Split as well, which is worth mentioning, where it's like...
Was it the same year?
I thought Split was 2016.
Yeah, Split was 2016 because these were both January.
Split was 2016.
2016, okay. But they do come out close together where it feels like... Now,
13 months apart, yeah.
Clearly, this is more of a cultural phenomenon, but that's a renaissance for this, like... I don't want to say disgraced filmmaker Split, but like a guy who hasn't had a good hit in a long time. So it feels like all this... Yeah,
I think Split was actually the next film I checked out because of Get Out, because it was Blumhouse.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to check out another Blumhouse film to see if this elevated horror still remains a thing. And then boom.
They hit a stride after this because I think perception of Blumhouse leading up to this is like they're definitely big guys in the horror game, but they're kind of the franchise guys. They put out a lot of as Fair's mentioned in the chat, Paranormal Activity. They're putting one out a year. You don't think of that as like high rich cinema. You might enjoy it; it's entertaining, but it's not getting that critical love or adoration. It's certainly not getting nominated for much. So you think they're putting out the series and the franchises. And it's maybe the horror movies, Matt, the types that aren't really interesting you at that time. So it kind of informs how you're like, well, that genre doesn't do much for me. Whereas, and don't get me wrong, after Get Out, I'm not saying they were all 10 out of 10 hits still, but I feel like the perception of Blumhouse shifts in the way that they're making.
Actually, Taylor was correct. This came out in January of 2017. Split is 2016 because of its festival runs beforehand. But the actual release date is January 20th, 2017. So they were a month apart.
Boom.
So Get Out was February.
Yeah, Get Out was February.
Movie release dates, baby. Yeah, so I feel like perception just kind of shifts in that 1-2 punch of like, oh, Blumhouse can do some really interesting things that aren't just Paranormal Activity 10 or Insidious 3. Like they're also making compelling original films, which they're still in the franchise game now.
I was just about to say, I wouldn't say it followed it up with some great films. You had one great film right away, and that was Happy Death Day. And
but there's some misses. There's some truth and dares in there and things like that.
I was just about to say, after Happy Death Day, you get Insidious, The Last Key, Truth and Dare, The First Purge. Then you get Halloween.
First Purge is good.
And I think First Purge has
First Purge is
Betty Gabriel in it, right? Who plays Georgina.
Positive rating one.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, no, there's some good ones still coming up, but then they get access to the franchise things. They get to bring back Halloween. They get to do Invisible Man. Yeah, man, I'm just a fan of the show, Fairs. You know what I mean? Like, you pick up things when you watch it. But they get. I feel like Blumhouse gets opportunities off the back of this movie's success and people taking them more seriously as a studio and Jason Blum more seriously as a producer. Again, doesn't mean they're all nothing really hits quite as hard as this does. Still, this is really an outlier and a unique moment in horror film. But I feel like a lot of things change for everybody that's attached to Get Out. And at the end of the day, that all has to do with the vision of Jordan Peele, who becomes one of our, like, a tentpole horror name, a household director. Which is nuts, this sort of thing. He never thought he was going to get made. He thought he was going to continue his career as the comedy actor, which he doesn't really act much after this. I think he said he's done basically acting, which is also interesting. He's never appeared in any of his own movies yet. Upgrade is great, Fairs. Upgrade fucking rules.
Yeah.
He just kind of transitions to the filmmaker Jordan Peele and becomes a household name in a way that I don't think a lot of modern filmmakers do. I also remember, this is just an anecdote I thought was nuts, is like at the same time he's making this, he gets an offer to voice the poop emoji in the Emoji Movie.
Yeah.
And he went, that's so fucked up.
He did voice act after this, though.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
He was in Toy Story 4.
Oh, of course, you're right. With
Michael
Key.
Key.
Yeah. I think, but I guess that was the thing. He was like, maybe I don't want to do this acting thing anymore. I'm getting offers to play animated pieces of shit when I could be making prestige Oscar award-winning.
Also remember, he was Melvin in Captain Underpants.
Hell yeah, he was. That movie fucking rules.
Good movie. Good movie. Big fan of Captain Underpants.
But like another door open for him is the Twilight. I mean, granted, it just got canceled, but the Twilight Zone TV series for CBS.
Wait, Twilight Zone got canceled?
Yeah, it got canceled after 2 seasons. They decided not to renew it.
I wanted to ask, have you guys? Because I've never really checked it out. Never given it a chance. Have you watched it?
I never got the chance to because Twilight Zone started around the time where I was reviewing Heavy, so I cut back on my television. So I never got to see Twilight Zone, but now that it's over, and let's be honest, right now reviews, we've had a lucky string this last month, but they're few and far between for the most part. Yeah. I'll probably take some time, check it out soon.
I haven't seen the second season, but that first season is real good.
He doesn't write those though. He's the producer, and he kind of feels like the Rod Serling
if I remember correctly.
He's like the Rod Serling kind of host character, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think he's the showrunner.
Yeah, he was the showrunner. He wrote one episode, storyboard for one episode, developed all 20 episodes. He was the showrunner and the creator. He was the one who brought the show back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's the mastermind, really, of like the revival.
Kind of a shame that people didn't catch it. Although he's also, of course, the producer on what we mentioned earlier, Lovecraft Country, which no shortage of acclaim on this show for Lovecraft Country.
And Hunters. I didn't even know he produced Hunters for Amazon.
That's right.
Yeah, which rules. Hunters is great.
And he got an Oscar for Hair Love because he was the co-executive producer on Hair Love.
There it is.
Look at that. Jordan Peele doing everything.
Doing everything, and that's what happens. It doesn't happen often, but it happens sometimes. And Get Out is the film that makes that happen for him, and really just changes a lot within our genre that we love to speak on, and then just the film culture and the opportunity for minority voices and filmmakers to get projects made. He's not just doing it; he's making it happen for other people too. So,
fair. We watched Lovecraft Country. We did a whole every Thursday when it was on, we were on this channel on this specific show talking about Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, Lovecraft was fantastic, and Hunters, like, that's coming back for another season, but that show is so good. And
not to take anything away from Misha Green, who's by all intents and purposes the heart and soul of Lovecraft Country, the showrunner, and I think she directed every episode. Mm-hmm. But it's possible that also doesn't happen without Jordan Peele saying, I'm interested in seeing this get made, and then HBO goes, oh, okay. Everybody wants to get that conversation with Jordan Peele. So even getting other things greenlit along the way.
And now Misha's getting a ton
of
stuff.
She just got something like a week or so ago, if I remember.
Yeah.
Correctly.
Yeah. So
Tomb Raider 2. She's the writer on the new Tomb Raider.
Yeah, she's directing that too.
Right, which fascinating follow-up. Never would have been my guess for what was next for.
I really want to see her It series.
That's right. Yeah.
I would love to see that. I want to see more of Misha Green, and I hope that Jordan Peele continues to find other filmmakers of color and kind of launching their career, rightfully so. I mean, look at Candyman coming out.
Right.
My guess is they talked to him because I remember there was reports that Marvel and DC reached out to him shortly after Get Out.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, they wanted Jordan Peele to direct Candyman, and he was like, "No, I want
I want to see his Gargoyles movie. That's what I want to see because he has said he wants to make a Gargoyles film, and he's tried to reach out to Disney and they won't take the call.
Oh come on!
Fuck you, Disney.
the fucking mouth.
Give this man his Gargoyles movie. I would pop.
You're telling me Mickey Mouse is out here greenlighting crap like Artemis Fowl, and he hasn't got like an extra 50 mil sitting around for Jordan Peele to spin gold with the Gargoyles, something they're not doing anything with other than put. By the way, Gargoyles fucking rules. I watched some of that with Jess and the kids when Disney Plus happened, and I was like, wow, this show holds up and is super good.
Yeah.
I loved Gargoyles.
It's really good.
Gargoyles is one of those Saturday morning cartoons, along with Batman, the animated series, and Superman that I'd watched with my family.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, you tell me they're making live action Gargoyles. I'm going, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Jordan Peele wants to make it?
Absolutely.
I'm like, yeah, I'm investing. And I can see even Chris Anthony Lopez in the chat says, holy fuck, it would rule. It would rule. You would find such a fascinating reason to even make that movie in the first place. Like, it wouldn't just be a cynical, like, let's dust off the IP and use it before we lose the rights to it. It'd be like,
they created it. They're not going to lose the rights to it.
I know Disney's never going to lose the rights to anything, but like in a world of like where that seems to be the motivating factor behind making those types of movies these days is like, well, we have it. We got to do something with it. It's like he's going to do something with it because he wants to and because there's a reason to.
Call to action. Everybody run up the streams on Gargoyles on Disney Plus. That way it comes to the number one streaming, like it overtakes WandaVision. Gargoyles is number one on Disney Plus in the world on any streaming service. And they have no other choice but to take Jordan Peele's call and be like, all right, we'll give you a movie. That's my call to action for everybody.
Hashtag Peele Gargoyles, yes.
Cody out, Disney exec. We have other plans for check notes. Gargoyles?
I don't do anything with it. A lot of visionary work with it. Hey, I love talking about Get Out. Was there anything we didn't cover with Get Out? Is there anything we feel like we didn't touch on that's still there and worth discussion?
No. I think we hit all the notes, covered all our bases.
Yeah.
What a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was.
All that's left is for us to sign off and get out.
Oh, before we do, I got a couple things to plug. Not only did we have our Coming to America review drop this week, we also had Raya and the Last Dragon. I can tell you right now, spoiler alert, it's worth the $30, but I'm gonna be like Connor and wait a month for it to be available to purchase on Vudu for $20, and then get it, and then watch it again. And then just last night, Connor and I reviewed Boogie.
Rest in peace, Pop Smoke.
Rest in peace, Pop Smoke. This was a surprising film. We both liked it. Like, it's very rare. So, and it's Connor. It's getting the love from critics all around right now. So
Good.
I'm enjoying
Good.
it.
Rightfully so. It's a great movie.
But yeah, so go check out those reviews for us real quick because it's some good movies. I'm
so glad, man, that you got the plug energy rolling because we have got a great show for you next week. Let's talk about it real quick. Next Thursday, March 11th, we're going to be joined by the fine people behind MetaZoo. What's MetaZoo? It is an amazing new trading card game based around cryptozoology, things like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and perhaps, I don't know, the Mothman. And as such, we will be discussing the Mothman Prophecies, a film that I feel is highly underrated, and I can't wait to watch it again and talk about it. That's streaming on Stars of all places. If you got an account over there, you can stream it there. Maybe you can get a free trial, what have you. But it's available on VOD, and probably a frayed DVD is available at your local exchange or something along those lines. The Mothman Prophecies. Can't wait to talk about that with the folks behind MetaZoo, who I actually believe are streaming on Twitch right now. So if you're watching this on Twitch when this show ends, we'll actually be hosting their channel, so you'll be able to check them out and see what they're all about. Also, go follow them on Instagram. I'm really excited to talk about their game and about the Mothman prophecies and cryptozoology in general, because you pay
Please
attention
you
to
left out the Loveland Frogger, boy.
Lovely. That's all you. You're a frogger. You're a froghead. I'm more of a Goofus guy. I don't know if they got a Goofus card. If I pull a Goofus holographic, dude, good night. Good night. Yeah, MetaZoo next week talking about the Mothman prophecies. And let me throw it up again because I may as well mention the entire month we've got coming up. March 18th, talking about the Tales from the Crypt film Demon Knight, none other than Little Evil JTE himself, perhaps known from the movie trivia Schmodown, JTE Movie Thinks on YouTube. Can't wait for him to join us for that. And the 25th, we're keeping the Finstock Exchange love rolling with Gold Leader himself, Evan Bushcard, to talk about Gerald's Game, directed by Mike Flanagan, and that's
I know you're excited about that one, bud.
Yeah, it's rare that a moment of violence or gore shakes me to this day. We've talked about this many times. That one got me. I've only watched it one time. And I'm gonna have to go back and oh my god, I might watch it like this. I might be pulling kind of a Chris Anthony Lopez, watching.
So is it Baskin level for you then?
It's not as extreme as Baskin. It's a very concentrated moment in the third act of the film that is just so realistic and oh my god. But yeah, it is a movie that Baskin's one that made me feel a way I hadn't felt in a long time, and this one is also channeling into that young, innocent horror fan who has not seen just how far down the rabbit hole goes. So I'm going back to that moment when we talked to Evan about Gerald's Game. So we got a great month, a bunch of great episodes, great films, great guests, and tonight was no exception either. Matt, thank you so much for joining us, coming on Really Scared tonight.
No problem.
Thank you for bringing Get Out to us. It was only a matter of time. This is a big movie. Only a matter of time before we got to it.
Yeah, my dad criticized me in the comments. It's like, look, this film shaped my taste for horror. So, yeah, it was going to be the one I picked.
Yeah, I know. And I loved hearing that perspective because it's not, the one that of the relatively new horror fan, not something we get very often on this show. So I'm glad that if anybody was going to bring, and somebody was going to bring Get Out to us, I'm glad that it was you, Mr. Matt Thomas. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to all those at home watching live after the fact or listening after the fact. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Leave a little cutie down below. Stay spooky. Good night, Ghouls and Goblins.
Good night.